Hi, and welcome back to the channel on this gorgeous sunny Sunday. What I want to do today is actually revisit something that I talked about before. This will be the third video covering Crosby, Stills and Nash, the debut album. The first video I think I did was talking about the MOFI One-Step. And the second one I did was talking about the Atlantic 75 from Analogue Productions. And what I want to talk about today is something that sort of came out of this, which when I got round to listening to this, it was kind of better in nearly all respects than my original, but for the sort of the overall kind of flow, if you like. And I surmised that basically this is on 180 gram vinyl, and my original, and this is the UK original, let me show you, is I'm guessing it'll probably be about 140 grams if I was to weigh it. But this is that's my UK original, and it sounds really fine. But my turntable, and I'll insert a little picture of it here, or more specifically my tone arm, which is a Glanz. Basically, the VTA is adjustable, the arm height, but it's a complete and utter pain in the arse, and you wouldn't want to be doing it over and over again. And I did try making adjustments when reviewing this, but it's pretty crude and coarse, and then took me forever to actually get it back to the setting I wanted. And most of my records in my collection are regular kind of original records, and even between labels, between eras, the record thicknesses change. That's one thing that affects the matter, but also the cutting angle. It should be a sort of standard, but it isn't. So if you really want to get fussy about it, you'll end up adjusting VTA for every record practically. Now there are arms that facilitate this, and I've had one before. I've had a few before, in fact. The arms that do facilitate this easily, I'll mention. So Clearaudio, any of their arms will do this because they make something called the VTA adjuster. The Graham Phantom I've had previously, and that you can adjust up and down. The SME Series 5, the SME Series 5, interestingly, for such an apparently well-engineered arm, you can adjust it in play going upwards, but you can't adjust it in play going downwards. The Graham, incidentally, I don't think you can do that in play, but it's still easily adjustable. And the other one I've tried that it was possible in play was the Eminent Technology ET2. And to be perfectly honest, that was probably the most elegant of the lot. But it's sort of been bugging me and playing in the back of my mind. And do I actually, getting more and more of these sort of 180, 200 gram records, do I really want to return to using a tone arm where I can make micro adjustments on the fly, even whilst listening? So I thought, there's only one way to find out as anything is to try it. So I've borrowed a turntable, and through my day job, this is something I can do. So I appreciate this might not be quite so easy for everyone else. So I borrowed a Clearaudio Reference Jubilee, which is it's a very good turntable, very good turntable, with a universal tone arm, crucially fitted with this VTA adjuster. And I'll insert some little pictures in here, and you can see by adjusting this lever, you can actually raise and lower the tone arm whilst you're playing, which makes it really easy to kind of dial in that exactly right VTA. And believe me, it's not as simple as setting the tone arm parallel to the record, which you can do with a number of different protractors, and I use a little acrylic block, which I find the easiest to get that. That's a really good starting place, but to really dial it in, frankly, I don't know any better way than doing it by ear. So what I want to do is using this turntable with this tone arm where I can actually dial things in by ear. I want to play again my original, the Analogue Productions Atlantic 75. I'm not going to bother with the classic records this time round, because but I will also bring back the One-Step from MOFI. Now, I don't really need my notes because it was blindingly obvious, but I'm just going to start off with Sweet Judy Blue Eyes, which is the first track. So I kind of started with that. Now, obviously I'm a different turntable, different tone arm, different cartridge. So I started off by kind of dialing it in for my original pressing, which I've already taken out and shown you. And once dialed in, it sounded really, really, really good. If there was anything, I would say it's slightly kind of fuzzy and indistinct in the vocal kind of separation, slightly, but it had it's a wonderful record and it's a wonderful recording and it sounds wonderful on the original pressing. The MOFI and the Atlantic 75, I found that actually increasing the tone arm height, which you'd expect, because if nothing else, they're thicker pieces of vinyl. So by bringing the back of the tone arm up, you're re-leveling up the arm. So, all things being equal, that's, if everything else was equal, if the cutting angle was equal, you could measure the thickness of the record with a caliper and increase the arm height by that amount, and you'd be bang on. But it's not, as I said, it's not quite that simple. Anyway, I just want to sort of go run through the sonic kind of effects. Now, when I reviewed this maybe a year or so ago, this MOFI, which is One-Step, which is something that should aid its sound quality. It's on this super vinyl and everything else. So first of all, the vinyl noise of this One-Step and the Atlantic 75 were very similar. So very, very quiet background. The original was noticeably noisier, and that's just how it is. Now, initially, when I played the MOFI here, with Sweet Judy Blue Eyes, you've got the vocals kind of in the middle. Particularly, you've got David Crosby and Graham Nash pretty much dead central, and Stephen Stills, I think, is singing slightly further away from the mic or slightly off. But it's kind of like you've almost got two entities. It's David and Graham, and then Stephen as a separate sort of vocal entity. And then you've got two main kind of guitar entities. In the left channel, you've got an acoustic kind of guitar. And then on the right channel, you've got an electric guitar. And then pretty much centrally, you've got the bass. And the bass is another really big thing that we need to talk about. But I first just wanted to talk about that guitar, particularly on the left, because when I started off with this, and remember I'm dialing this in from scratch, there were two things I was trying to sort of dial out, if you like, and it was a vocal kind of bright and grittiness, harshness, if you like, particularly on that left-hand channel, a very bright, harsh, pins and needles-y kind of quality to that acoustic guitar in the right-hand channel. Now, interestingly enough, that it did seem to be there was more brightness on that left-hand channel. And this is something else I want to talk about, adjusting by ear, and that's the anti-skate. So the first thing I did is I actually wound back the anti-skate force, and very clearly by doing that you could smooth out that left-hand channel and really sort of stop that sort of needles and pins, fingernails in your face kind of quality to the acoustic guitar on the left-hand channel. So these are all things that have an effect, and I just want to discuss them all because this is all about the finer points of setup. And if you don't get your turntable completely finely set up, you may be listening to the turntable setup rather than the record. And as I said, that's really why I wanted to borrow a different turntable where these things are all very, very easily adjustable during play, so that we can kind of dial out the turntable from the equation and then really get down to the acid test of which one of these pressings sounds best. Okay, so using the kind of using a combination of all three, but particularly with the MOFI, and I'll come back to that in a bit as to why I think that made it so easy with the MOFI. Using the anti-skating, reducing the anti-skating force, basically sort of smoothed out and sort of took away the bite, if you like, an unnatural bite from the left channel. If you had an unnatural bite in the right channel, you might want to increase the anti-skate. It's basically adjusting how, if you've got your groove like that, it's adjusting how much pressure the stylus has on each wall. You want it to be equal. That is the entire purpose of anti-skate, to actually correct for a natural phenomenon caused by the offset of the cartridge in the tone arm. Parallel tracking tone arms, such as the eminent technology I mentioned earlier, and all of the Clearaudio parallel tracking tone arms, any parallel tracking tone arm, don't require anti-skate because there is no offset of the cartridge, so skating is not generated in the first place. Okay, so that's kind of the audible effects of anti-skate and how to sort of dial that in. Right now, to cut a long story short, I sort of, with each of the records, I sort of tweaked the VTA, and I'll insert a little bit of video here just to sort of show how you can move this during play, and you're raising and lowering the tone arm. Now, on the VTA lifter, the Clearaudio VTA lifter, I was going between, say, 1 and 2 PM on a clock face dial. And that's probably, we're talking maybe 0.5 millimeter of movement up and down. And that's all it took to go from sort of, the best on one record to the best on another. It's not, and this is again why it's so much easier with a variable while playing tone arm rather than, measure something, make a small adjustment, tighten everything back up, play something, take it apart, measure it. Like I would have to do on the Glanz tone arm, because it's so, you're talking about tenths, hundredths of a millimeter even, and those sorts of movements are just, very, very hard to make accurately and repeatably. So anyway, with the setting set optimally for the original, which is kind of where my Miyajima is set, okay? Now, most records play absolutely fine like this. That doesn't mean to say they're playing perfectly, but they're playing absolutely fine. But because I don't want to be adjusting for every record, I kind of choose what I think is, the optimum for 80% of my record collection or something that's not too far out for those other records, So set for this sounded just fantastic. The Analogue production sounded clearer, but just a little bit heavy in the bass. And I think that's pretty much what I would have said in my previous review on these, where it was sort of swings and roundabouts whether you'd prefer the original or the Analogue Productions Atlantic 75. This has definitely got sort of more clarity, more separation between the voices, the guitars, all that kind of stuff. It's got more bass weight, but whether that suits your setup and your system. Now, by tweaking the VTA up, I would say probably by no more than, 0.1 or 2 of a millimeter. the base of this snaps in, and everything else just snaps that little bit better into focus. And there is no question, by optimizing for each record, there is no question the Analogue Productions Atlantic 75 is the one that won. It is capable of the highest fidelity, the greatest sort of musical connection to the recording. It just feels and sounds great. Okay, very, very, very similar to the original, just with a little bit more clarity to it, kind of thing. Okay, and a little bit more weight. The MOFI, again, played at the same setting as the original. The MOFI just sounded a bit ponderous and sort of dead, but very, very, very clean. Now, optimizing for the MOFI, which again, like with the Analogue Productions, it involved raising the rear of the tone arm somewhat, maybe the tiniest little touch more. But it was a very interesting thing. So if you want clarity, absolute clarity, I would say that the MOFI is the best of the lot. But if you actually want to enjoy the music, I would say the MOFI is the worst of the lot. It's a very, very interesting thing. It was extremely clear with the MOFI, extremely clear, but just felt absolutely lifeless and flat. And going from the MOFI to either the Analogue Productions or the original, just instantly the first vocal sound, the first guitar strum, everything just existed in a natural space. I mean, it's when I first sort of started listening to these, I didn't really necessarily notice it, but in comparison with a very, very good, they're both pressed on superb vinyl, they're both 45 RPM, they're both from the original Analogue tapes, although the MOFI is via a DSD step, so it has been digitized, and of course there's then got to be, it goes through an A to D and then a D to A. A lot of quite intrusive processes. It just feels like it's been sanitized, and for me, going back to it and really, really, really trying to dial it in to get the very best of what this can do. It's really impressive what this can do, and some people might absolutely love that. If your goal is this sort of real, pure, dark clarity, you might like this. But if you like that natural air, the analog feeling of reality and space and nature, I don't think you'll like it very much, and I honestly think you prefer the original. And if you want to set your turntable up absolutely for the best, I don't think there's any question that you'll get the best results out of the Analogue Productions Atlantic 75. So I don't really mean to confuse you all with all this, but I think it was kind of worth going back to this and talking about the different settings that a turntable is sort of you need to address in order to get the absolute optimum, and how sort of switching from one pressing to another, you can't just naturally assume that everything is the same. Now, a sort of postscript to all this, I've obviously kept I've got quite a few selections of this. As you see, that one here is that's the classic records version, 33 RPM. And no, it isn't. That's the original. This one's the classic records. But anyway, you can see I've got 4 of these. I'm not going to keep them all. I'm going to keep the original and the Atlantic 75 Analogue Productions pressing, and it will be, I will probably, I will return to my normal setup, which is the Miyajima mounted in the glands on the master reference. And at this stage, I'm not moved to adjust that VTA for every single record. It's something I don't really feel the need to. But it's, if you actually want to absolutely know, then frankly, you need to do that. You can know you're not getting, you're getting 95% of the sound rather than 100%, but to know how that 5% actually changes it, you kind of need to do it and listen. Anyway, so that's where we're at. I hope that was useful and interesting. So pretty much the same opinion as before, although without a doubt, whereas my previous conclusion was it was, swings and roundabouts, but I think I probably prefer overall the original. There is no question, if you do go that extra mile with the Atlantic 75, the potential there is best, is there to beat the original, and it's a damned impressive cut. Okay, so on that note, I'll say cheerio, thanks for watching, and I'll see you all again soon. Bye now, bye.